Hey folks, my name is Brian Heesung Kim, and I am the creator and developer of DAAF, the Data Analyst Augmentation Framework. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the full process of installing DAAF and Claude Code from start to finish, as well as go through a basic tutorial for how to start using it in your day-to-day workflows. If you're here, I'm guessing you already know what DAAF is and are excited to get started. But if you don't already know what DAAF is, I'd encourage you to check out our webpage to learn more about what it does and why I think a tool like this is genuinely useful and can still help us actually reaffirm and embody our core scientific principles in the research work that we do. There's a lot to that statement that I can't fully get into in this video, but if it's something you want to learn more about, I would really love for you to dive into the website materials. I spent a ton of time on it trying to make the case and explain exactly how this stuff works. I will link it in the description below. The long story short is that DAAF is an open source and forever free toolkit for researchers to get started harnessing the power of Claude Code while helping to manage and mitigate the many issues inherent in using AI assistants, like sycophancy, hallucination, lack of transparency, lack of reproducibility. Altogether, I think DAAF is the best and safest and most responsible way to get started using Claude Code as a researcher. Installation itself is actually extremely straightforward. In terms of active time and active effort, you only actually have to take 4 pretty quick steps to get working right away and start talking with Claude Code and start doing genuine research and data analysis with it. So why is this video longer than 3 minutes? Basically, I've tried to simplify the installation process itself as much as possible, but this video is designed to give you a strong working intuition into what's actually going on under the hood, because I think that's actually critical in using these tools both responsibly and effectively at the end of the day. This is especially going to be geared towards researchers who are interested in using Claude Code for research, but may have never used Claude Code or related software like Terminal, Docker, or Git, which I'll talk more about in this video. What I hope to do, both in this video and with DAAF as a tool in general, is to demystify and decomplexify all of these things to make them approachable and usable for someone with any level of actual technical background. If you're following along on your own computer as you watch this video, I'd encourage you to have the installation guide website open as well, which I'll link as well in the description below. I'll show it on screen occasionally and have everything kind of organized for you, and you can follow along that way, but feel free to pause and tab back and forth as you follow the steps. Also, just a quick note before we dive in, what you'll see on screen and exactly what I show you in this video may be subject to change as I update DAAF with more features, better quality of life improvements, and so on. But this is all going to be current as of version 3.0, and it should generally be the same process going forward. All right, so with that preamble out of the way, let's get started. Step 1 is actually just getting you set up with a few prerequisites, which should hopefully not take much time at all. First, you're going to install a free program called Docker Desktop on your computer. To do this, you're going to go to docker.com, click on the Get Started button, download the right version for your computer operating system, and then click through the options accordingly on the installer itself. Note that you may actually need administrative permissions on your computer for this to work properly, so if you have like a company computer or an institutional computer, you might need some IT support if the installer does not work for you right out of the gate. I will show this whole process on screen for both Windows and for Mac while I explain a little bit more about what Docker actually is. So if you haven't heard of Docker before, Docker is basically an industry standard program used across the software development, cloud computing, and just the general tech sector. It allows us to create what is essentially a walled-off sandbox mini computer inside of your actual computer. Now, that might sound like a little bit over-engineered for data analysis, but actually it allows us to do 3 really, really important things for our purposes here. First, and this is maybe the most important one, having DAAF and Claude Code run inside this sandboxed virtual environment, which we call a container, allows us to create a lot of guardrails and protections that prevent Claude Code from doing anything to your home computer or personal files that it should not be doing. AI assistants like Claude are getting increasingly powerful. And as exciting as that is in some ways and also like kind of terrifying, it also means that when things go wrong, like when it misinterprets instructions or when it gets confused, or even when someone maliciously tries to trick your AI into doing dangerous activities, it can cause more and more damage as their capabilities expand. So it's very important that we actually don't take for granted that the AI that we're using is going to do everything we want it to do the way we want it to do it. This is why we actually have to protect ourselves and guard ourselves against the AI going off the rails. So with DAAF, we install Claude Code not on your actual computer, but inside this protected sandbox environment that prevents it from accessing any of your computer files, messing with your home computer settings, or taking any action on your behalf that you haven't explicitly authorized. I firmly believe that no one should be using Claude Code outside of these sorts of protections. And I think it's super important that we take the steps to protect users, especially when they're just getting started. So That's the big first thing. It's very much for security. Second, it allows us to set up that virtual computer on your machine in a perfectly reproducible and repeatable way, installing the exact same software versions in the exact same order every single time. Now, this is really valuable because it means that when anyone installs DAAF, it functions the same way on Windows, it functions the same way on Mac, it functions the same way on Linux. All of that is going to be predictable. When you install DAAF, it'll always work the same way out of the box, and it's always easy to reset or start on a new computer as needed. And third, and this is really nice for us as researchers, not only does it make the software installs all reproducible, it also makes our analytics environment perfectly reproducible and repeatable. When we install the data analysis software like Python and R for DAAF, we don't actually have to worry about compatibility between software versions on your computer or between one statistical library and another. All of it is going to work out of the box immediately, and it's perfectly replicable for any analysis that we run from that environment. It really saves us a lot of headaches, facilitates great collaboration with others, and guarantees reproducibility for anything that you make with it. So to recap, when we're installing DAAF and Claude Code, all of that is actually going to happen inside of a nice, secure, protected Docker container that is fully reproducible with access to a similarly fully reproducible Python and R analytic environment. And it will only have access to the files that you explicitly give it permission to access, so it can't touch anything on your computer otherwise. When you're done installing Docker, just make sure that you actually open Docker, and then we'll talk through one more prerequisite before we actually kick things off with Claude Code. Just note that if you do run into any issues in the next couple of steps, you may need to actually restart your computer for the installation of Docker to kind of fully wrap up. With that out of the way, the next thing you're going to do once Docker Desktop is installed on your computer and restarted is open up a terminal window on your computer. If you've never done this before, a terminal is basically just a way for you to interact with your computer programmatically with code instead of clicking around windows and file browsers like you're probably used to. In the terminal, you can navigate from folder to folder, you can run programs, you can copy files, you can delete files, and so on and so forth, but you do this with a few code commands instead of just clicking around. The exact code that you'll run at this point depends on whether you're on a Windows computer or a Mac or a Linux computer, so I'll show those side by side on screen, but they're basically the same thing with just small differences. Again, all the instructions here are also available in the install guide in the website, linked in the description, so you can easily copy and paste every command that you see from there. The terminal is also going to be how we launch DAAF and interact with Claude Code going forward. So I know this might feel a little bit intimidating, like you're going to feel like a movie hacker or like you're hacking into your own computer and it's really scary, but I promise it's not actually that dramatic. By the end of this tutorial, you'll basically think of this as just an uglier chatbot window. Don't be intimidated. The way that I set up DAAF is designed to make this as frictionless as possible and effortless as possible so that you can focus on just doing the actual work and producing valuable research whenever possible. If you're on a Mac, you're going to open the Terminal application, which you can find by searching Terminal in your Spotlight search. If you're on a Windows, you're actually going to open a program called PowerShell, so you'll search for PowerShell in your Start menu. Once you have your Terminal window open, whether that's Terminal or PowerShell, you're going to navigate to the folder where you want to install DAAF. The easiest way to do this is to type the letters CD, which means change directory or folder, followed by the path to your folder. So for example, I want to use my downloads folder, so I'll type CD downloads and then create a folder from there. You can also type ls to show exactly what files are in the current folder that the terminal is looking at, so you can see how to navigate from there as well by typing CD to a folder within the folder that it's currently viewing. If you need help with this step, the installation guide on the website has more detailed instructions for your specific operating system, as well as just general tips for navigating in this terminal system if you're not used to it especially. Now, once you've navigated to your desired folder, you're going to copy and paste the one-line installation command from the installation guide for your operating system into your terminal window. The command is going to take somewhere between 5 and 20 minutes to fully run, depending on your internet speed, because it's basically downloading all of these programs and software that we need in the secure Docker container and getting that all set up for us. One thing I'll flag is that at some point the installer might actually look like it's hanging or stuck, like it's not doing anything for a few minutes at a time. That's totally normal, so don't close the window. Just make sure to let it keep running unless it actually stops and gives you some kind of error. And so here's what it's going to be doing during that time. So run that command, and then I'll kind of explain it. First, it's creating that customized Docker virtual computer that I described a minute ago, configured for maximum protection and control over Claude Code to prevent the vast majority of possible issues proactively. It's also installing all of the necessary setup software to make sure that Claude Code and DAAF run correctly on that virtual computer. So think like compatibility and like other prerequisite software. Second, it's going to install Claude Code itself, the actual AI coding assistant and program from Anthropic that DAAF is going to be built on top of and uses to kind of do all of its analysis. Third, it's going to then install the DAAF framework itself, all of these like curated instructions, safety protocols, workflow guidance, data source documentation, and other quality control systems that customize how Claude Code thinks and works and interacts with you as a researcher. Fourth, it's setting up our full data science environment, which is now actually fully bilingual, which is nice. You get Python with over 50 libraries for basically anything you need to do for quantitative research or statistical modeling, econometrics, geospatial analysis, data visualization. We got machine learning, we got survey-weighted estimation. And you also get a complete R environment right alongside it with over 60 R packages. So think the classics like Tidyverse and ggplot2, and also FixEst and so on, plus Quarto for notebooks and reports. There's a bunch going on in there, but it handles all of that for you. Just an FYI, Python is set as the default for DAAF, but if you're an R person, all you have to do is tell DAAF, set the execution language to R at the start of a session. That's it, just conversational. There are no configuration files to edit or anything like that. And if you've ever dealt with the headache of installing Python or R packages and making sure they all work together, this is hopefully going to save you an enormous amount of time and frustration. When it's done, you'll have this really nice, completely contained environment in which you can use Claude Code to run all sorts of really rigorous and careful data analysis work. Claude Code can only see whatever you provide it directly into the container. So all work like code files or data files or dashboards that it produces for you are also going to be saved inside of this container. And you'll also need to explicitly decide whether and when to take anything back out of it. So I'll talk more about file management later on in the video. This separation of the Docker container requires a bit more hassle than I think I would like, but that's the trade-off for the security and control that I think is really well worth it in our line of business. And I set up a bunch of tools to hopefully make this as frictionless as possible. After all of that, you'll only have a few files in your installation folder on your actual computer itself that'll help you run and manage DAAF going forward. Everything else lives inside the Docker container from here on. And so now we're basically done. The next step is you're going to use your terminal or PowerShell to navigate inside the installation folder and open up what I call the DAAF control panel, which is a special helper program that I designed to basically manage all of the Docker setup and management and everything else in the background so you don't actually have to think about it. In either case, you're going to enter your installation folder by typing cd daaf-docker, which is the folder that it installs to by default. And then on a Mac, you're going to basically run a command that says bash daaf.sh. On Windows, it's the same thing, but it's going to be /daaf.ps1. I'll show these on screen. But then basically you can see it's going to pull up this menu with everything you need to run and manage DAAF going forward. So starting Claude Code, browsing your files, viewing session logs, backups, updates. It's all going to be in this one home screen, and we'll talk more about what some of these features are, but that's really all you have to do to remember how you're going to work with DAAF from here on. So to actually get started, we're just going to type whichever one for your system you need to run this command center, and then you're going to type 1 to start Claude Code and hit enter. And then you can see it's going to spin up the actual Docker container and launch Claude Code right in your actual terminal window, which is really nice. The first thing Claude is going to ask you to do is link Claude Code to your Anthropic account. While DAAF is the toolkit that I created and it's totally free that sits on top of Claude Code, the AI that powers Claude Code actually costs money to run, which is why you're going to need to link your account. Full disclosure, there are a few options here if you don't already have an account, and the exact process varies a bit based on whether you have a personal account or you're using a more complex enterprise account. But running any significant data analysis with Claude Code will almost certainly require the $100 to $200 a month subscription levels. You can get away with the $20 level if you're doing only light or some exploratory work, but the level of power and sophistication required from the models to actually do good research work unfortunately has that cost barrier in place. There are ways to use cheaper models to get more mileage out of a lower subscription level, and I actually have detailed guidance on the website about how to even use free open source models with DAAF. But there are steep trade-offs, unfortunately, to quality to consider in the end, and there's going to be more on that in a different video, but for now, let's link your Anthropic account with Claude Code to get started. If you have a standard personal license, basically what it'll do is it'll give you a special URL to log into the Anthropic website, give you a special authentication code, and then you'll just paste that back into the Claude Code terminal window to get that account linked in. One more thing to note, your exact account setup in Claude Code also dictates what Anthropic is or is not allowed to do with the data that you work with. There are enterprise licenses and setups you can use that are extremely protective of your data and actually even all the way up to like HIPAA compatible. But those need to be explicitly set up by your IT department and enterprise agreements. If you don't know what your data protection setup is, I'd really strongly encourage you to work with your IT folks to figure that out. And until you do, focus on using publicly available and non-proprietary data with DAAF and Claude Code. We still really need to be thoughtful and deliberate data stewards, especially in this era of AI. So really make sure that this is something you pay close attention to. That is it for installation. We are done. We now have Claude Code running in a virtual environment on your computer, safely sandboxed, away from all of your private and sensitive personal files, with a perfectly repeatable, reproducible analytic environment for you to do really any number of data analysis tasks of any arbitrary complexity. And I really mean that. You can talk with DAAF conversationally to do pretty much anything analytically that you can think of. And that includes pulling and joining together data from a bunch of different APIs to running complex causal inference analyses. But for now, we're going to get started very small first, so you get a sense of how it all works and what to expect. So let's start our first conversation with DAAF, and I'll use this as a way to give you a sense of what it can actually do. First, let's just say hi to DAAF and let it know that we're totally new to using DAAF and Claude Code. You can ask it something like, what should I know to get started? And what's something simple we can do together for me to get a sense of how this all works? The very first thing it's going to do is show you what I call the transparency statement. The first time you ever talk with DAAF. This is like a little user acknowledgement describing what I think are your responsibilities as a user of DAAF to closely keep track of and monitor what it does, and just review how it works and what it produces for you to take ownership of anything that you co-create with DAAF. Very honestly, please pause the video and read this carefully at your own pace because I think it's a really important first step before you do anything else here and hopefully gives you a good sense of how you should approach this system. Once you've acknowledged it, it'll start to engage you in a conversation. Now, AI assistants like Claude are non-deterministic, which means that DAAF might take you in a slightly different direction than what I'm going to show on screen, but the principle should generally be the same. First, DAAF is going to suggest a few ideas to try to help you pick a specific workflow like user support or data lookup or data discovery. And essentially, it's going to try and walk you through conversationally what it thinks is a good way to get you started. DAAF is going to really try to understand at any point, however you interact with it, what your goals are for the session so it can recommend an appropriate research workflow that properly balances keeping you in the loop, delegating the work to the specialist assistants that it's going to kind of spin up in the background, keeping tabs on project progress and documentation, and then pausing for your review as needed. There are a bunch of these workflow modes, and you can ask DAAF directly for more info on any of them at any time. This is all known as agentic orchestration, basically managing work across multiple specialized AI assistants in tandem so that DAAF can arbitrarily scale in complexity and you really don't have to worry too much about it. For this demo, I'm going to go with data lookup, which is a workflow that I designed that makes DAAF a little bit like your own personal data documentation oracle for diving into specific in-the-weeds data questions for any data set. It's first going to understand my request, and then it's going to go dig into the actual data documentation that it has available to answer my question with what's available. DAAF comes out of the box with basically all of the major public data sets for education, thanks to the Urban Institute Education Data Portal. But DAAF can actually do this with any data set from any domain when provided with access to a data set, its codebook, technical papers, and so on and so forth. So you can actually ask it about how the data onboarding process works for more information. But for now, I can basically ask in plain language any basic data question about any data set it has access to and get back some really nice grounded insights almost immediately, sort of like being able to talk to a data codebook. What you'll see happen as it works is it will keep pulling up these reference materials to help guide and ground its thinking. You'll see it call something called the read tool or the skill command to do this. And basically what it's doing is it's reading files that I've crafted and curated on your behalf, which basically include a lot of good information about how it should operate. Now, all of this is open source and you can poke around, you can edit these files, you can adjust them, you can add to them. I'm going to have a lot more on that later. But for now, this reference loading that you should know about is the key to getting anything useful out of AI as of June 2026. You have to give them clear guiding documents and reference material to shape how they operate before you ask them to really do anything. And otherwise, they're going to basically improvise and hallucinate and just do very apparently dumb things really often. So this is something you'll hear more about in general in AI called context engineering, which is this basic practice of giving your AI these guidelines and references right as it needs them when they're going to be working on your behalf. DAAF does this all for you and shows you exactly when it's reading documents and why. But this is going to help you understand whether it's forgetting to read and going off of vibes, so you can actually intervene. And you can actually even remind it to read certain documents and references if you know enough about how the system works. So at this point, you should feel free to pause the video and just continue talking with DAAF to learn more. Like, play around, maybe even ask it to pull some actual data, generate some data visualizations for you, and just see how it actually works, both like in conversation, brainstorming, or even when it's producing code for you. There's something even called the full pipeline mode, where it can help you orchestrate an entire data analysis pipeline from like a general research question to a fully reproducible data analysis pipeline and report. But again, I encourage you to ease in with the simpler modes first for now. So before we move on, 5 useful commands to be aware of that you can run in Claude Code. First, copy allows you to automatically copy any text of any message DAAF has sent in the chat window. Rewind allows you to rewind the conversation back to any point in case it actually goes off the rails or you want to change any decision that you've made over the course of the conversation. Clear resets the conversation back to a blank slate and a fully fresh conversation. Resume allows you to actually restart a prior conversation that you've had with DAAF, maybe in case it crashed or you closed the window or you did clear something that you want to actually return to. And then lastly, there's exit. Typing /exit is going to close out Claude Code and drop you right back at that DAAF control panel menu, so you can do whatever else you want here or just quit out completely. It's worth emphasizing one really cool thing about how DAAF is set up is that you can actually talk to DAAF and Claude Code about any technical questions, support questions, bugs, issues you're running into. There's an explicit user support mode that I built in where if you ask it for help, DAAF will actually load up and read the documentation, and it can search over like Claude Code documentation or Docker troubleshooting files, and it can help you through whatever you need. So in other words, now that you have DAAF set up, you can use DAAF to learn more about how to use DAAF and Claude Code as a tutor directly, which I think is really, really neat. So now you have access to DAAF and Claude Code in this protected, isolated environment, ready to do whatever you want with it for any kind of data and research work. To recap conceptually what's going on right now, we are now using our terminal window to manage a conversation with Claude, which is set up inside this virtual protected Docker container. Claude has access to this nice fully featured Python and R analytic environment and is being guided by DAAF workflows and instructions to help it work more responsibly and transparently and rigorously with you in the driver's seat. In the rest of this video, I'm going to talk you through some of the high-level details for working with DAAF successfully in practical day-to-day workflows. So things like file management, auditing DAAF's work, updating DAAF to a newer version when I release new updates, and then most importantly, how to really engage with DAAF responsibly and where you can go to start learning some more of the advanced features of DAAF. If you open up another terminal window, go to your DAAF installation directory and run that same daaf.sh or daaf.ps1 script from before, you'll get another copy of the DAAF control panel, and this is where all of these day-to-day management tools will live. The first one you'll want to be aware of is the Browse Files option, which is going to launch a program called Visual Studio Code for you. Visual Studio Code is a really nice open source file browser and editor built specifically for coding workflows, which is great for our purposes since DAAF produces a ton of code and text files in its work. It now comes pre-installed with any DAAF installation, and when you choose the Browse Files option, it's going to start VS Code up in the background and then actually just pop it open in your browser for you automatically, which you can engage with like any other sort of file browser. The password by default is DAAF, all lowercase, but you can change it at any time in the environment settings options, which you can ask DAAF how to do. Here, you can browse the entire DAAF directory that Claude has access to. You can see the research files you've produced, if any, and you can make edits or upload new files for DAAF to access as needed. Most work that you will do will live in this research folder, and you can see a couple of example projects in the folder already for demo purposes if you just want to kind of see how things get structured. This is the easiest way to interact with the files that DAAF produces and also how to provide files to DAAF. Recognizing that since DAAF and Claude Code live in the Docker image, it can only access files that you explicitly provide to it through this process. Now, if you've ever used Git before, VS Code also has a really nice Git browser, which lets you very easily track changes to any files or code that DAAF writes on your behalf in this panel. If you're not familiar with it, I highly recommend asking DAAF about it in the future, since it's a really, really valuable asset in the process of managing research workflows with any AI assistants. And when you're done with this, you can go back to the control panel menu, and there's a Stop Web Services option that will turn off VS Code and any of these other browser-based tools for you if you'd like. The next thing I'd be aware of is the create backup option, which, as you might have guessed, allows you to save a complete copy of the entire DAAF directory to your home computer. It saves it in a nice dated folder anytime you run it, which is probably the easiest way to pull whole research folders out of it and then back up your work more robustly over time. This also makes it really easy for you to share any research projects with collaborators or share any customizations you might have made to DAAF as well. After that, there's also the check for updates option, which, as it says on the tin, allows you to update your installation of DAAF to a newer version if I update things like workflows, more methodological and data support skills, and so on. DAAF is actively being developed and improved week by week, and I'll always announce updates on Substack and X and GitHub and LinkedIn and stuff like that to keep people in the loop. There's not really any need to stay on top of every single update, but my hope is that every update provides some meaningful new value or workflow and quality of life improvements. The update process itself is pretty guided and painless. It's just going to ask you to back up DAAF before you begin. After that, you're just going to kind of run through a couple of steps to update it, and it should be pretty straightforward otherwise. And then lastly, for this video, and this segues nicely into how to become a more responsible and advanced user of a system like DAAF, is the session log viewer that I built. You'll choose the View Session Logs option in the control panel, kind of just like how we did with the VS Code option, and it's going to launch a little website and pop it open in your browser automatically. This is a visual timeline of everything that Claude Code does during a session. It's every thought it has, every tool it uses, every file it reads or writes, every command it runs. It's all going to be logged and presented in what I think of as a pretty nice and clean browsable interface. This is incredibly valuable for understanding and monitoring what Claude Code is actually doing on your behalf, and diagnosing any issues or concerns, or just generally building your intuition for how it works. I really encourage you to have this open in a tab whenever you're working with DAAF. You should even be able to pull up your first conversation with DAAF here and see exactly what it captures and how it works. The point here is that you can audit and review everything that DAAF does, which I think is a really important part of using AI responsibly as a researcher in this new paradigm. It's not enough to just trust the system and think that it works. And in fact, I explicitly encourage you not to trust DAAF. You absolutely should be verifying and interrogating and checking its work. And a lot of what I've built into DAAF are just ways of ensuring that you can do so easily and consistently whenever you need to, which Claude Code is honestly terrible at allowing by default. The point of DAAF is to be a force multiplying exoskeleton for skilled researchers. It amplifies your expertise through structured, AI-assisted workflows and extensive automated quality checks. But it is not a replacement for your judgment. It is not an autonomous research system that you can trust outright and then just walk away from. It is not fire and forget. At its core, DAAF is powered by large language models, which are fundamentally susceptible to real, unavoidable limitations that we talked about earlier. They will always hallucinate, they can be dangerously sycophantic, they can become strangely overconfident, and they can be really lazy. These are not hypothetical risks. They are inherent properties of current large language model technology that no amount of prompt engineering or structured workflows can really eliminate, no matter how hard I try with something like DAAF. Now, what DAAF does is it layers a lot of great instructions and grounded references and extensive verification onto every single step of the work that it does for you. It runs automated data quality checks where it can. It has a separate assistant adversarially review any piece of code that it makes. And it's going to pause at mandatory checkpoints for your review and weigh in. It's going to try to attend closely to these sort of data limitations and idiosyncrasies as well. But, and this is the key here, DAAF can only reduce the probability of issues occurring. It cannot guarantee that they don't occur, and it definitely does not eliminate the need for your judgment. It's going to reduce the surface area of what you need to verify, and it makes verification easier by giving you organized, traceable artifacts. But your expertise is the real necessary safeguard at the end of the day. In practice, what this means is always review the core products that DAAF produces early and often. Scrutinize results with your domain knowledge, especially anything that is going to be made public. Treat DAAF's outputs as a high-quality first draft requiring expert review rather than a finished product. And then just really never use DAAF results as the sole basis for high-stakes decisions without this necessary human verification. You can use it for exploratory scoping, but if you're actually going to be using this for decisions, really take the time to verify. The more powerful these tools get, the more important it is for us as users to understand and monitor exactly what is going on. This is so that we can validate and review and audit all of the things that are being done so we can stand by the work that's being co-created with these tools. And I actually think that's where DAAF really shines. You have every single script it wrote fully documented, and you have the log explorer showing you exactly every single action that it took to get there. You have every single decision traceable from start to finish. You don't actually have to trust it, and you can verify everything. A lot of AI systems and companies are trying really hard to hide the ball here and act like we can design away these issues. But DAAF is really taking the fully opposite approach, trying to show you all the warts and empowering you to manage and navigate that directly as an informed and critical participant in the work. That way, you are always kept in the driver's seat as a human researcher, but still enhanced by all these really nice things that Claude Code can do on our behalf. So it can produce a fully documented and reproducible statistical analysis in a couple of hours running in the background. It can help you rapidly iterate on a bunch of data visualizations. And it can join together as many data sets as you want for running analyses. It's really nice, and DAAF is designed to help you manage that power in a way that's responsible and thorough and thoughtful. So hopefully that gives you a good start. I know there is a lot in this video, but the thing I really want you to take away is this, basically. The install is really simple, the tools are really powerful, and the guardrails need to be there for a reason. I encourage you to take the time to understand what's going on, use the log explorer, review the outputs, and then ask DAAF questions when you're confused. That's how you're going to go from basically, I installed this thing, I'm using Claude Code, to I actually have a genuine understanding of how to use this DAAF tool and Claude Code responsibly as a researcher to do really good research, which is kind of the whole point here. And DAAF is intended to really be a flexible framework. It's both what I think of as a phenomenal starting point for getting into agentic AI for research for the first time. And also, it's a hyper customizable and extensible tool to adapt to whatever your needs are going to be going forward as you become more adept and more comfortable with it. I have a ton of resources available online for more guided learning on the website, and I recommend going through the kind of learn sequence that I've produced if you really want to do anything serious with DAAF. It covers a lot more of the intuition behind context engineering and agentic orchestration, and really importantly, extending and customizing DAAF to better suit your needs and actual workflows. Now, if you have questions after that, if you run into any issues, or even if you just want to share what you're working on, I would love to hear about it. So I'm going to link the Discord and the GitHub repository in the description, which are both going to be ways of being a part of and contributing to the community of people using AI like this for responsible and rigorous research across disciplines. I think these are really complex, but extremely urgent conversations. And I really want as many people as possible to be prepared and armed with the knowledge they need to use these tools well, to be good critics of them, to be critical and informed consumers of them. And while I think that DAAF is really, really useful out of the gate, my hope is that with continued development and support from the broader research community, we can just keep making it better. And at this point, DAAF is hopefully the worst that it's ever going to be from now on, because we just keep making it better. And of course, the AI tools and models underlying it are just always going to keep getting better. So I'm going to keep coming out with more tutorial videos, so stay tuned on that frontier to keep building. But otherwise, I hope this was useful for decomplexifying and demystifying what it means to get started with DAAF, what it means to get started with Claude Code for research, and hopefully just making it a little bit more approachable to understand what's going on under the hood. So thanks for being here, thanks for sticking with it, and I'll see you in the next one.